Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to SAR's June meeting. For tonight's talk, it gives me great pleasure to welcome the return of Natta Jain. Natta is an astrologer whose work draws from the rich worlds of mythology, psychology, and the magic of the symbolic language. Her journey into the mystical arts began when she received her first tarot deck at the age of 11, a moment that sparked a lifetime exploration of occult philosophy, astrology, and art. Today, Natta shares her passion through her work with esoteric technologies, the creators of Solar Fire and Astro Gold astrology software. There she teaches astrology, writes social media content, and hosts the company's official TikTok page, bringing astrological wisdom to a global audience in a way that is imaginative, insightful, and deeply rooted in the timeless traditions of the stars. So I'd like to hand you over and say, welcome, Natta.
Welcome, Natta.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for having me again. Nice to see you, Cheryl in particular. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining this evening. Well, we have an exciting evening ahead of us. There's a lot to get through, so we shall crack on imminently. And if you do have any questions, there will be some time at the end of today's chat to ask questions. So today, as the heading here suggests, we are going to be talking about the connections between tarot and astrology. We're also going to be having a look at the creation of the Rider-Waite Smith deck. This is one of the cards, the Ace of Wands on the front page here. We're going to have a look at the creation of that deck, as it was, even though whilst it wasn't the first one, it is actually the most significant iconic tarot deck in use today. So without further ado, let's crack on. So we've got some slides, and we're also going to be having a look at Astro Gold as well. So here, just to basically start off is to say that to really understand the Rider-Waite Smith deck, we really need to actually step back into time to a period that's more so about the late 19th century, early 20th century. It's often that period of time is called the occult revival. And it's a period that saw a significant growing hunger for mystical knowledge and spiritual alternatives to a very rigid sort of Victorian values and mechanistic science at the time. During that period, secret societies were flourishing. The Theosophical Society, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which is what we're going to be talking a bit about today, the Rosicrucians, Masonic groups, all of them offering symbolic language and spiritual practices that promised us to be able to explore hidden truths. So central to this revival was a desire to be able to weave ancient wisdom together, alchemy, Kabbalah, numerology, astrology, and of course, tarot as well. So they weren't really seen as separate tools. It was an integration, trying to bring those languages together. Almost a bit like Esperanza, basically, making a common language. So the Golden Dawn in particular was very instrumental in forming these magical systems that are still in use in tarot today. And that's something that we're going to be having a look at. And we're also going to be having a look at Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Colman Smith, who were both members of the Golden Dawn, who were the two people that created the Rider-Waite Smith tarot deck. So let's have a little look. So first of all, I thought we'd just have a quick chat about what tarot is. So there's 78 cards in a tarot deck, for those who are not so familiar. And the deck is basically split into two separate piles. So you've got one, which are called the Major Arcana, which are bigger spiritual lessons, or often people will refer to them as archetypal cards. And then you've got the 56 minor arcana, which are more like mundane or like day to day. And they can also be more so about people's personality types and stuff like this, or how we need to act in a situation. But they have an incredibly rich, powerful correspondences between all of them. So a good way to consider tarot is a bit like a psychological snapshot in time. And it's a mirror of our subconscious, our inner self, much like a birth chart is, and much like the transits are. And it helps us to understand our state that we're in, where we came from, and the different stages of life that we're moving through as well. Tarot is just as dynamic as astrology is. It's constantly shifting and altering. So often many people see it a bit like an initiatory map, particularly with the major arcana cards, which I'll show you shortly, where it goes on a journey. Also a little bit like Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey almost too. And this reflects our spiritual and our soul's development throughout life, and how the planets connect with that and mirror it, like the microcosm and the macrocosm. So initially, tarot was rooted in the Renaissance period, and it's very influenced by Neoplatonism in particular, and it's very systematic, particularly when it got to the 19th century. It became very systematic, and that was through the different sort of people looking at it with more clarity, if you like, in regard to particular belief systems. So each card holds different layers of astrological attributes. These are zodiac signs, decans, planetary rulerships. They're connected to a symbolic mandala sort of image called the Tree of Life, which I'll show you shortly. And this all functions as part of more of a visual zodiac, not in the chart form that we're familiar with, but a different diagram. Tarot is used as a ritual and a meditative tool. It's not just divination. And it's something that I find with my practice with my clients is a wonderful way of integrating their experience with tarot and astrology together. It really helps them to sort of ground themselves and to feel at one with themselves as well. So let's have a look. So this is just a very, very brief history of tarot. Now you'll see here, so this is one of the cards here. This is the Ten of Pentacles. It's actually the last of these 78 cards. And being the 78th card, it's the culmination of everything. It is the complete synthesis. And you'll notice that I've drawn, so these little white lines aren't normally on this card, but I've drawn them in on this version. And this is a depiction of the Tree of Life that we're going to be talking about shortly. So you can see, even on this Ten of Pentacles, artistically, it's been very purposefully made in this diagram. So back in the 13th century, there was a Spanish Jewish Kabbalist, Joseph ben Abraham Gitkala, and he wrote a mystical philosophy book that's also about cosmology, and it was called The Gates of Light. So that was quite a long time ago in the 13th century. Fast forwarding time a little bit, by the time that we get to the mid 15th century, this is when we see the very earliest copies of tarot decks. Now, there might be earlier versions, but from a historical perspective, this is the earliest ones that we have actual evidence of. And so the Visconti deck, being the earliest deck, was commissioned by the Duke of Milan in Italy. It was a wedding gift initially, and it was hand painted on tempera, with tempera on very thick paper. The first tarot deck was never made to be shuffled. It was incredibly thick. You couldn't possibly shuffle it back then. And so tarot became incredibly popular when the printing press got invented. And so throughout the 15th, 16th centuries, it was really, really growing in popularity. By the time that we got to 1789, there was a French occultist called Etilia, and he took this tarot, and he was very well versed in magic and occult practices, and he noticed that tarot really seemed to synthesize incredibly well with a lot of these older mystical systems. Prior to that, there's no evidence. Prior to 1789, there's no evidence of tarot actually being linked to any magical practices, but a lot of historians believe that there is, but there's no hard evidence of that. So in 1789, though, this is when it first started to be talked about in this way by him. And then he actually published the very first ever book on tarot in 1791. And this book, these meanings were identical to the Gates of Light, which was the Kabbalistic cosmology book that was in the 13th century. So then we jump right back up to the top of the list again. And this is why today is that we really focus on all this deeper meaning and understanding of tarot, because it's actually these practices that we're exploring a lot more and understanding in philosophies of the world. In 1909, so in 1888, there was the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which we'll talk about shortly, which is a British magical occult group. And two of the members were Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Colman Smith. They met through that group. And those two members, they ended up publishing the Rider-Waite Tarot deck. At the time, it wasn't known as the Rider-Waite Smith deck because Pamela was a woman. And at that point in history, women were a little bit on the back burner, unfortunately. So it was just the Rider-Waite Tarot. And it was really heavily influenced by the Golden Dawn teachings, but these teachings in themselves were based on the work of Attilia, which again comes from those late 1700 times. And a good way to think about them is like early flashcards, basically. And they've been used like flashcards over history for many different reasons. In the 1700s, at one point, they were being used by flashcards to teach butchers how to learn how to cut meat. And they'd have different pictures of meat cuttings on. And they were also used by cobblers about how to learn their trade. So tarot cards have been used as flashcards for many different professions as well. So here on this page, I'm just showing you how they visually changed over time. So the top row is 4 different variations of the major arcana card, the Fool. Just remembering that the Fool is a card that is very much about the greater spiritual journey because it's one of the major arcana cards. So it's a greater, more archetypal card. And so this is the Visconti deck. So this is the first ever one that we have recognition of in 1460. And so this is one of the majors, the Fool. And then this is one of the minor cards here underneath the 3 of Swords. You can see as we go along the majors on the top, the Solar Busker being in 1491, Marseille being 1701 and Rider-Waite being 1909, that this majors, they've actually stayed fairly similar. They haven't changed that much. They look quite similar, but the early ones didn't have numbers and they didn't have names. The names came later and then the numbers came after that. Down here, though, things have changed quite significantly. So this first tarot deck with the 3 of Swords here, this is what is known as an esoteric deck, because unless you really understand the meaning and you've learned that, you're not going to look at that picture and automatically know what it means. The image from that or the symbolism from that is quite hidden unless you've studied it. And most decks were made like this. They look like a normal playing card deck. Like, you know, you'll have like the 4 of Cups or like the 4 of Hearts. It's a good example of the 4 of Cups. It's the same card. They'll just look like normal playing cards. Very unusually for the time in the Solar Busker in 1491, they had this more illustrative version. You can see the 3 of Swords is going through a heart, which is suggestive of heartache and sorrow and distress. So that was in 1491, not so long after this was published. But this deck didn't really become that popular at the time. It was very much based, it was an Italian deck. All of these first 3 are Italian decks, even though this is the Marseille, it's still an Italian deck. This Italian deck, the Solar Busker, was very focused on the time at the local war that was going on regionally. And most of the cards in this deck depicted the warring heroes. And it was a very violent looking deck. And so that might have been why it wasn't actually as popular at the time, and maybe why it didn't take off as much, because it's quite a distressing deck in many ways, people felt. Marseille, 1709, it's produced in France. The main publishing house was in France, but it's actually from Italy. And this tarot deck, Three of Swords, is very, very inspired by the Visconti. But most tarot decks after this date, 1709, are based on this Marseille deck. So really, until we get the Rider-Waite deck, pretty much everything is based off the Marseille. This Solabasca fell into obscurity. People hadn't heard of it. But it's not something people were familiar with. So the idea that these minor arcana cards had more visual images was something that pretty much most people didn't know anything about until much later. And then we've got the Rider-Waite-Smith one here in 1909, and you can see it's been inspired by the Solabasca. And now in this deck, for the first time in history, apart from the Solabasca, but the Solabasca wasn't very popular, for the first time in history, now people are actually seeing visual representations on the cards of people in their everyday life, giving them symbolic clues about what the card actually means. So it's no longer esoteric. So all of these decks here, the Visconti and also the Marseille deck, are classed as esoteric, whereas the Solabasca and the Rider-Waite and all the decks that have come after the Rider-Waite, which are in the same theme as that, showing the pip cards illustrated, they're all exoteric, where they show you what the meaning is more so. It's easy to understand. And this is part and parcel of why this deck became so famous. If it wasn't illustrated like this, it would have probably been a very different story. So here we've got the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. And these guys were founded in 1998 in London, and it was a secret society, and they were devoted to ceremonial magic and mysticism and tarot and Kabbalah, and also they were very interested in Masonic practices and all sorts. And they had a very strong structured grade initiatory system. And often people would progress through different paths and spiritual magical development, and they would have a lot of study that they would do. And part of their study was astrology, and part of their study was tarot. So they had the members, they have very famous members. W.B. Yeats was a member, Aleister Crowley was also a member. And then we've got Arthur Edward Waite and Pamela Colman Smith. And so they really mixed and merged a lot of different spiritual traditions in the same way that they did in the Renaissance times when tarot was first born. They were doing the same thing at that period too, where they were mixing Egyptian and Christian mysticism, Jewish Kabbalah, Rosicrucianism, Sufism, all sorts of things, and also Renaissance magic. And this is the idea of this unified system. So when we have a look at the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, we see a really big mismatch, a sort of merger, I should say, of lots of different symbolism from all different traditions and places in the world. So this is Arthur. So Arthur was born in 1957 even. 1857. I've made him very young just then. 1857 in America. In Brooklyn, but he was raised in England. And we're going to have a look at his chart shortly. So we're going to go over to AstroGold in a second. And so he was very, very devoutly Christian. And that was a very, very important part of his life. And he joined the Hermetic Order soon after it began in 1891. And he really helped to create a lot of the systems that they used and their rituals. And he was very scholarly. So his primary focus was being a scholarly mystic. He had a very spiritual approach to magic. His main interest was more so mysticism. He didn't really get on with Aleister Crowley that well. There was a lot of terse words between them both. He eventually, in the end, though, he splintered off and created his own group, the Independent and Rectified Rite of the Golden Dawn. And this is where he really honed down on Christian mysticism in particular, putting magic to the side. He ended up actually creating another tarot deck as well after the Rider-Waite-Smith deck that focused a lot more on Christian values. But it didn't become as popular as the Rider-Waite. So he did create the Rider-Waite-Smith deck with Pamela in 1909. He commissioned her to help him illustrate that deck, and it is embedded with the Golden Dawn astrological and Kabbalistic symbolism. And so he saw tarot as a book of mysteries. He didn't really see it as divination. He actually wasn't really into divination at all. If anyone is familiar with tarot, you might be familiar with something called the Celtic cross spread. And the reason why the Celtic cross spread is so popular these days is because one of Pamela's friends, who was heavily into divination, as was Pamela, encouraged Arthur to put it in the little white book that came with the tarot deck at the time when it was published. And he did so. He didn't want to, because he didn't want it to be focused on divination, but he gave in. And because that Celtic cross deck is with the Rider-Waite-Smith deck when it got published, that's how come it became the most famous tarot deck today, most famous tarot spread today. So this is Pamela, and Pamela was born in 1878. She's 100 years older than me. And she was born to London and American parents, but she was raised in many different places, Jamaica, New York, England, and they were all really influenced her in great ways, her fashion, her mythology, her belief system. Pamela had a very difficult life. She struggled a lot to be taken seriously. She was a very significant, influential part of the suffragette movement, fighting for women's rights. She did a lot of their posters and flyers in early times. She got taken advantage a lot financially, and she found it also very hard because she was a lesbian, and a lot of people, didn't really take well to her, also being half Jamaican as well. So she really did sit on the fringes of society. She trained at the Pratt Institute in New York and became one of the first colored women to attend. She also was an illustrator and set designer. And this is where we see a lot of her artwork in the tarot deck, is a lot to do with theatrical set design. She joined the Golden Dawn in 1901, and this is where Arthur Edward Waite, she was exposed to him and all of those teachings. As we mentioned, she was commissioned to create that deck in 1909. It took her 6 months to create that deck, and she was paid a princely sum of £6, English pounds, to create it over a 6-month period, which is about the equivalent of about just over $200 or pounds for the month. So it wasn't very much, it was pittance. But it was a real labor of love for her. So there are actually letters that she wrote to her friend complaining about how poorly she was being paid for it. So her artwork is embedded with Golden Dawn symbolism, but also her own personal imagery of her life, and also symbology that is from astrology and from different spiritual traditions. Later on, she converted to Catholicism and she died in obscurity. And her visionary art was lost until the tarot was really rediscovered again in the early 70s by Stuart R. Kaplan, who was a gentleman who had US games, and he revived it, basically. If it wasn't also for Stuart R. Kaplan reviving tarot, and also there being a significant movement with tarot being picked up by people like David Bowie and the Rolling Stones and a lot of the hippie movement of the time, it would have probably got lost into obscurity. So let's have a look at Astro Gold, and we're going to have a look at their birth charts. And we're also going to have a look at the transits. We'll have a look at the synastry base briefly, and we'll have a look at the transits. And also, yes, that's right. Yes, we'll have a look at that. So first of all, here we've got Arthur's chart. So Arthur, as we said, he's the visionary architect of things, the scholar mystic. So first of all is that we've got his sun over here in Libra. And it's conjunct his Mercury retrograde. And so this is, a very intellectual realm. Very powerful, very much centered around building and forging connections with others, but through that act of teaching, very ninth house, very much the idea of leading forward, being a philosopher. But also with the retrograde of Mercury there, sometimes it can be a little bit more distanced too. The ninth house is also very good for publishing, actually, as well. So, and obviously esoteric philosophy and comparative religion and symbolic synthesis. The Mercury retrograde is also able to reformulate traditional teachings, though. That Mercury retrograde can be a little bit more renegade in some ways. It's got a bit more of a novel or original aspect to it because it goes so inwards. It's from a different, views things from that different lens. So it's very fitting for a scholar who adapted the Golden Dawn material and made a more mystical version of it for his own structure. And the conjunction there, it's really very much contributing to that very strong energy that he has for that, and that very contextual and analytical quality that he has. This is trine down to his Chiron in Aquarius in that first house. And this is this wounded individualism. And it suggests a form of sort of initiatory mentorship. He really ended up positioning himself as a bridge between ancient mystery systems and also modern spiritual seekers. And over time, he helped a lot of people, and it was also, very on the fringe of society still for himself. We've got Neptune that's in Pisces, also that North Node, and the Moon is also in Pisces there as a little stellium. And this is all these mystical idealism and emotional identification and the spiritual path. The Neptune there in that second house is reflecting those spiritual value system that we have. And also the spiritual wealth being the second house as well, that comes from a symbolic economy. And that sense of self-worth that he drives from the intangible. It's got the conjunction with the North Node, which is this greater karmic imperative that dissolves boundaries and is very much that point of personal and transpersonal through sacred knowledge. We've got the Moon there in Pisces in the third, which is cognitive and emotional attunement via symbolic and poetry and archetypes as well, and indicates emotional transmission of mystical knowledge through writing and coded systems. We also have a configuration where it's trining up to Saturn over here in the seventh house in Cancer, which is really grounding Waite's vision in structured, more sort of emotionally resonant system, the rituals and the liturgy and the esoteric framework that helps to stabilize, and the spiritual experience helps it form a more formal language there with Saturn, but also that greater commitment to things, that bond that he had with that. So Saturn is the chart ruler, the lord of the house, not in an easy position in its detriment in Cancer, but as the ruler there, it very much plays a very strong role, and being located in the seventh house. That seventh house can also show things like fraternal orders, and we've got the Golden Dawn as well, and the Fellowship of the Rosy Cross, and ideologic tensions that he might have possibly had in these areas too at times. We've got the trine of the Moon as well here that we have. The trine Moon and the Node in Pisces that it is connecting to, which is a profound spiritual duty and the desire to have a mystic anchor, from within. It's also sextiling his fifth house, Uranus Taurus, which is a capacity for innovation and traditional esoteric arts, particularly through creative ritual and a systemized symbolism. And Uranus here empowers Saturn to reconstruct spiritual language in a way that balances tradition with evolutionary insights. Oh, we just have a little message here. Oh, yes. Bob was just saying the moon at the beginning of today's meeting when we're chatting is 27 Virgo conjunct the South Node, which is opposite the moon. Oh, right, in Waite's chart. How fascinating. At 27 Pisces conjunct the North Node. Synchronicities. Yeah, absolutely. Isn't that fascinating? I love it when things like that happen. Really shows the magic weaving together, doesn't it? I've also added Vesta to this chart. So he's got Vesta up there in Virgo in the 8th. That's opposite Neptune, that stellium, not the stellium really, but it's opposite Neptune, and it's also trine Jupiter. So Vesta in Virgo, you know, it's that devotional aspect, right? Sacerdotal commitment to preserving and purifying the mystery traditions. It's also editorial and translation work because, you know, Virgo is very much about editing, and so is that 8th house to a degree. You know, it's very much about streamlining, tailoring, isn't it? And it includes his adaptations that he's made within his teachings on Rosicrucianism and also in mystical Christianity, also reflected in that signature there. Venus is in fall in Virgo. It's conjunct Vesta, it's near Mars, and this can lead to austerity and precision in his values around beauty and devotion. And this was, you know, he didn't make the deck because he loved artwork. He made the deck, he wasn't as interested really in the beauty of the artwork. He just really wanted to make sure that it made sense and that it was symbolically correct. To a degree, you know, there's lots of little frilly bits on the art that he didn't mind Pamela having control over, but he was really focused on the major arcanas in particular. Those ones really needed to be spot on for him. It's opposite Neptune here as well, that Vesta, and that reiterates the internal dialect and ordering of things. And it's the polarity of the mystical scholar that also struggles to define which transcends form. So, and then he has the trine to Jupiter in the 4th, which is some roots in those mystical traditions, that the family roots in the mystical traditions, and the continuity of sacred teachings across generations. And then he's got the Mars, is also in that 8th house in Virgo. And this is this very disciplined will that he has in relation to his occult practices. It's quite formal. It's very good for structured and initiatory systems, which is what he was involved with. So there is Arthur. Let's swap this over to Pamela. See how we're doing for time. Right. Okay, so with Pamela's chart here, I'm whizzing through because I've got so many slides to show you as well. So with Pamela's chart here, Pamela, you know, remembering that Pamela is the creative in all of this. She's mystical, she's visionary, she's a bit of the renegade. And so it's a very, very different vibe here, right? So where Arthur was the architect, Pamela is the creative. And we see that here. So first of all, so also Pamela has a 12 p.m. I've done it as a midday chart because we don't have the time for her. So it's a 0 degrees Aries chart. So I'm not going to be talking about her houses. Okay. And also when I'm talking about her moon, I mean, I'm doing it in a broad sense. So it will be in Leo, but it might not necessarily be conjunct that South Node. But we'll assume maybe it might be. We'll see. So anyway, so she's got her sun here that is conjunct the North Node in Aquarius, and it's opposite the Uranus and the South Node in Leo. So the sun in Aquarius, you know, this is her wild, very individualistic side, where she's also very focused on humanity as well, and her social groups and things like this. And it's this collective service aspect, but also her individual brilliance that is wonderfully, weirdly, uniquely her. And it's conjunct that it's conjunct her North Node there as well. And that North Node is a very powerful driving force for her because it is that greater sense of destination, of driver, of greater spiritual purpose, of fulfilling one's destiny. And it's right there, very tightly conjunct that sun. So this is a big thing for her, and very focused on that idea in Aquarius of how she can be involved and how she can be impactful on the collective consciousness and a greater sense of legacy there as well. So her Uranus is opposite, conjunct her South Node, which describes a karmic familiarity with eccentricities and dramatic self-expression. The artistic environments that she's grown up in. She's worked in theatre and illustration before she got to magical practices. Yet the theatre and the illustration, which is all very Leo, was not her path, her destiny. It was a point of departure for her. So it's where she started off with her South Node. And so the opposite, being her North Node, is indicative, showing that polarity and taking intuitive performance and then bringing this conceptual detachment between it and bringing in personal symbolism as well and the magical qualities. The Rider-Waite-Smith deck revolves around the tension between her theatrical Leo qualities and her esoteric North Node Aquarius qualities as well, of also building systems too. Now, if I just go over to here, so I'm just going to go up into Sheets, and this is Aztec Patterns. It's actually a new feature that we've recently added to Astro Gold. So we can have a look at her aspect pattern here, and if I click on it, you'll see it will single that out. And so Pamela has a fixed T-square in her chart. And so the main apex of that is Pluto in Taurus in this fixed configuration. And it's focusing the volatile Leo Aquarius opposition into a deeper imperative to render the invisible visible through form, being Taurus. So the placement suggests more of a compulsion to materialize psychological and occult forces. Pluto in Taurus embodies the alchemical grounding of archetypes into enduring artistic form, precisely what tarot is. The T-square reflects not only the creative tensions, but the disempowerment of the creator. She was incredibly disempowered, as I was mentioning. She was very marginalized. And she died in obscurity there. Despite the deck's success, this also mirrors a slight shadow dynamic that was going on with her creative process and how she was seen in her involvement with things and her on her life path. She also has her Venus here, which we'll have a look at in a second, that's in retrograde. And this, let me just go back, let me get rid of this. There we go, back to where we are. Yeah, she's got her Venus in Pisces in retrograde there. And Pisces, is very creative and very mystical, so is Venus. But being in retrograde, sometimes that can show someone where the creator is overlooked or misunderstood in their time. Think about all the artists who don't get discovered until after they've passed away. And sometimes it can also be Venus retrograde for artists can often be a reversal or a reevaluation of artistic values, which Pamela definitely did as she got older. She turned to Catholicism and started making artwork that was very based around that instead. She completely turned her back on the magical practices. So Venus in Pisces is naturally attuned to the imaginal realms and the archetypal beauty. And it's exalted there, and it channels this timeless liminal quality of her tarot illustrations that she has. In her chart here, we've got Neptune, Chiron, Mars, all conjunct in Taurus. And so this really helps to intensify the drive to manifest the mystical through the material. And Mars is really very action orientated in the fixed earth sign of Taurus. In addition, we've got Chiron that's emphasizing the creative wound as a source of spiritual growth. Pamela found creating that deck a bit of a labor of love, but it was also a very cathartic experience for her. It taught her a lot, and in turn, it's helped a lot of other people. She has also got square Mercury Aquarius here as well. So this goes up, this Mars kind of coming up here into the square with Mercury. And it may have been, and it was actually very complicated, for her to talk and express herself to people. She often got shunned because of the way that she talked as well. Often people felt that she wasn't rational, or that she acted a bit childish or a bit whimsical at sometimes. And so there can be a tension with this between her intuitive sense of knowing and being able to conceptually articulate things. Often artists can find that they can find that their language is more visual than it is through the spoken word. So also sometimes this can show more of a non-linear and imaginational processing style, which she had too. She has got Vesta in Aries, and it's trining her moon, probably in Leo, but if she's born early in the morning, it might have been in Cancer, but probably Leo anyway. But it is trining Vesta, and Vesta is in Aries, and it's fiery, and it's autonomous, and it's aligned with her inner fire. And one thing that Pamela was throughout all her ups and downs is that she had an uncompromising devotion towards her creative purpose. Without fail, she never gave up. If the moon is in Cancer, then maybe the trine emphasizes more of the mystical sensitivity and emotional solitude that her art serviced her. But I have a feeling it's probably in Leo. So here that's Pamela's chart. And so let's have a little look at them together. So, oops, we'll come back to that one in a second. Let me just go into Arthur's. And I'm just gonna, let me just, hold on a sec. I just need to move that out the way of the screen. Let me just swap this over. There we are. So I'm not doing this as a combined chart or anything like that. We don't know Pamela's time. So I'm looking at it with Arthur, I should say, on the inside wheel, and Pamela as the bi wheel on the outside. Okay, so they did have a difficult relationship. They were definitely peers, sure, but and they were intellectually compatible in some ways, but there was a lot of also intellectual incompatibility, mainly because Arthur didn't really respect her that much. And there was a lot of creative friction as well about the spiritual direction of things. So whilst they did work together for a short period, it definitely wasn't easy. The relationship was often quite taut. Yet their relationship carried a significant, distinct sense of purpose as well. Okay, so we've got Pamela. Pamela has got her Mercury in Aquarius that is here, and her Mercury in Aquarius is trining up to Arthur's Sun and his Mercury, which really I think is one of the biggest things with this. And this is this shared intellectual wavelength, the fact that they were actually just both interested in the same thing. Whether they were on the same level of it or not is immaterial here. It's the fact that they were both into the mystical arts and astrology and tarot and all these sorts of things. And these abstract systems and this symbolic language. They both valued conceptual clarity through expressions through a different lens from the majority of most people on the street. Pamela's, she's got her intuitive aspect, whereas obviously Arthur has that is a lot more sort of structured. And I think that aspect is the bedrock of their connection, really. So the difficulties, we've got that Chiron we've got the Mercury, I should say, Pamela's Mercury on top of Chiron there, that's going to cause some difficulties between them in their language and how they get on and how they express each other, and this kind of tension that can rise between them. But then also at the same time, Pamela's Sun is opposite his Venus and Mars as well. And this is a bit of a temperamental polarity as well, and also different aesthetics too. So this Pamela's Sun in Aquarius, is very visionary, it's archetypal, it's expressive, whereas Arthur's Venus and Mars in Virgo is a lot more ritual precision and symbolic order and doctrinal clarity and stuff like this. There's these emotional karmic ties there. Arthur's moon that is in Pisces is conjunct the Saturn and her Neptune as well, both in Pisces. And it's a very karmic emotional contract that they have. very professional, even though it wasn't necessarily that friendly, but it was very professional. And it contained a disciplined aspect. They both got the work done come hell or high water. And also this more spiritual quality to all of that, all in Pisces. It was a functional working bond, and that's that Saturn there that's connected with the moon. Pamela's moon, assuming it is in Leo, also squares Arthur's Jupiter in Taurus, which introduces value-based friction, particularly around expressive freedom and emotional style. Whilst Pamela's moon is more performative and expressive, and this is more aligned with her theatrical background, whereas the Jupiter here that Arthur has is seeking stability and restraint and control over meaning at times. But there are supportive undercurrents. Pamela's Venus in Pisces is sextiling Arthur's Pluto, I should say, in Taurus. So there is a creative chemistry and a depth between them as well. And the moon there that's in Arthur's Pisces is also sextile Pamela's Jupiter and Capricorn, which is this emotional, spiritual rapport that they did have. And I'm sure that she learned a lot from him in particular about different spiritual, mystical ideas, because he was an initiatory grade, quite a few initiatory grades higher than she was. And then we've also got Pamela's Jupiter that was Capricorn in Capricorn, that is sextile to the North Node in Pisces, and trine the South Node as well in Virgo. And this is these karmic key aspects here and facilitators of this greater evolutionary path. So that's a little bit of a look of that. Let's have a look at being mindful for time. Let's have a very quick look at I'll just mention a couple of things here when we're having a look at the transits for when they released it. So when it was published really secretively almost. It wasn't a big hoo-ha. Arthur didn't want it like that, even though it was released to the public. He wasn't really interested in it being popular. He just wanted to make sure that people who were interested in in his spiritual practices were able to find it, which is still quite far and few between at the time. So it was published very much under the radar. So the day that we have for it being published, the 10th of December 1909, is when it was actually first published in a kind of a magazine on that day. That's when it was first given to the public. So I've done it as 12 p.m. I'm not exactly sure of the time. There is no time, but I've done it as midday chart. Anyway, so if we're having a look at these charts here together, then we've got, let's see, we've got at the and Scorpio is all the occult, all the mysterious, everything that is hidden underneath. Now, in Arthur's chart, it would have been potentially in his 10th house. I doubt that at 4 o'clock, by 4 o'clock, it would have gone into the 11th house, but I doubt if they were going to publish something, surely it would have been published in the morning, or I would have thought before the end of business. So I'm sure it was probably published when the moon was in Scorpio still. Anyway, so here it's in the 10th house, and that 10th house is, very work and public facing. And then we've also got here that he's got Jupiter that is on top of his Sun and his Mercury at that time, which is also very significant. That 9th house is your house of publishing. It's naturally ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter conjunct your Sun is, I believe, a blessing. It's the greater beneficent. So that's a really nice time to be publishing something. We've also got Venus that is on top of Chiron there at the same time as well. And that Venus there is that creativity that was birthed, but that also that creativity that was birthed also did still help a lot of people. That was very important. So we've got the Sun and Mercury, which are in the 12th house, though, and their hidden motives and quiet intentions, which is exactly his intention of publishing that deck. He wanted to do it on the quiet, and the 12th house is all very private. It's also initiatory approaches to spirituality, which tarot very much is, and those serious seekers of the mystical path, and the inner work. As we said, you've got the Jupiter on top of the Sun and Mercury there as well, which is fantastic for bringing the metaphysical into publishing domain. Yes, and then we've got that Venus that is with Chiron there as well. That, as I said, it helps to form a sacred reconciliation between maybe his own path and also a lot of other people's over the course of time. And then there's also the transit North Node that's in Gemini, that's in the 5th house. That 5th house is very creative as well, too. And it forms a nice trine to the Sun as well. And transmitting that esoteric knowledge was that life purpose, bringing that creation to fruition. So that was Arthur's. Let's have a quick look. We'll change this around and have a quick look with Pamela. And then try and whiz through these slides. Gosh, I think I think maybe we might do like 10-minute talk questions at the end, 5 or 10-minute questions at the end, because I have a lot of slides to show you. Sorry, guys. Let's let me quickly show you. Oh, hold on. Here. That's what I want. And 2 and Pamela's there. And I'll just swap them over. Okay. And so here's Pamela's. And so in Pamela's one, the transiting Sun is trining the natal moon in Leo, so which is confidence in releasing her work, and a moment of internal affirmation, finally, after all that hard work. And we've got transiting, Mercury is trining Uranus as well. And there's a sextile to the North Node in Aquarius. So with that Uranus in Leo, it's intuitive, it's insight, it's originality, and the mental spontaneity. And the sextile to the North Node in Aquarius is all this karmic layering and life direction and flow of symbolic cognition that was happening. We've also got transiting Venus that is conjunct the Mercury, which is aesthetic clarity and intelligence and intellectualizing beauty and symbolic design in the expression of things. But it's still a little bit emotionally detached, though, to a degree. As I said, there was no big fanfare for this. It was still a little bit like on the fringes, which is still in theme. And then we've got transiting North Node in Gemini, which is square to the natal Venus. So this introduces creative and rational tension, and that is a tension point. And it, the whole thing wasn't very easy. But the Gemini is the emphasis on communication and logic and dissemination through the Pisces Venus lens of mystical, romantic, and spiritual things. That square is showing the disconnect between her inner artistic values and the external framework into which her work was actually released. She did find it quite hard with that framework at times. There was a sense of misalignment also between her contribution and the reward that she received. Transiting Jupiter is connecting with the natal Mercury. And this is intellectually expansive and very affirming transit as well. So there's pluses and minuses here for Pamela, basically. Okay, so I'm going to come off this now. We're going to leave there and we're going to go back to the slides. And there's quite a few slides to go through. So, all right. So this is a little bit about the Hermetic order of the Golden Dawn that they both joined. More so, not about the order, but about how they used astrology and tarot. So this is going to help you to understand how it's used. Astrology is used in the practice of tarot. So the decans are assigned to the minor arcana cards. So technically there's 56 minor arcana cards, but if we take out all the aces and the court cards, there's 36. And these 36 cards 2 to 10, so like the 2 of Wands or the 3 of Cups or the 4 of Swords or the 8 of Pentacles, all of these correspond to different decans. And these are planetary rulerships derived from the Chaldean order. And this is something that the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn were heavily into. And the aces and the court cards are related to longer spans of time, and they're more to do with the elements and the modes in astrology. So that's one way. So it's layered basically. So that's one layer. I'll visually show you the layers in a second. So that's one layer. The next layer is with a diagram called the Tree of Life, which is a structured map of the major arcana cards. There's 22 of those, and each of those are linked on this map between these, what we call Sephiroth or spheres. And there are different pathways between them. I'll show you in a second. So that's another way it's linked. The planetary and zodiacal attributions to tarot, the 22 major arcana cards, are linked to the 7 classical zodiac planets, and also to the zodiac signs. But these days, people will also not just use the classical planets, but they'll also include Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto too. And the system, all these systems have turned tarot into a magical tool, basically. So it's a synthesis of all these practices. And the 22 major arcana cards are related to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So this is something that is called the Tree of Life. It is a symbolic mandala that depicts the microcosm and the macrocosm, and it illustrates humanity's relationship with the cosmos and spiritual philosophy and the art of manifestation, and also our own personal journey towards enlightenment. When we're going down the tree, so we start at 1 and then we go downwards, this is us manifesting things, creating things in the physical realm. When we're working from 10 and working up the tree to 1, then this is us on the path towards enlightenment. So these circles, you can see, I've put different astrological symbols in them, and they're all ruled by different planets, and also they rule different court cards and minor cards. So in position number 1, this is where all the aces in tarot live. So a lot of people will see number 1 being ruled by Pluto, which is about transformation and power. So all the aces, whether it's the Ace of Wands or the Ace of Pentacles or the Ace of Swords or the Ace of Cups, all of them will have this transformative power Pluto vibe about them. People link it to Pluto today, but at one point, I'll show you on a different diagram, it used to be just a dot that was symbolic before Pluto was discovered, and it was often referred to as the swirlings. And it's just this idea of this cosmic kind of almost like before the Big Bang type of an energy. So you'll notice on this, we've got the minors here. So all the 3s in tarot live here, but also the queens live here as well. All the queens, Queen of Wands, Queen of Swords, Queen of Cups, they all have the energy of Saturn. They're all got a responsible and a restrictive quality to them. Here we've got the 6s, which is where the night lives. And all of this is the sun. So these are like what I call umbrella energies. So umbrella energy is not a term that's used. That's a term I made up, but they're kind of like umbrella planets, if you like. So every 6, whether it's the 6 pentacles or the 6 swords, whatever, all the 6s will have this umbrella energy of the sun. Likewise, so will all the knights. So all of them, regardless of what one they are, have a undercurrent of purpose and action and ego. So I will leave you to read this for when you go back and watch the video again, but that gives you an example of the Tree of Life there with all the minor arcana cards on it. So we relate these all to we relate all of these minor arcana cards to planets. The pages are ruled by the symbol of Earth, not being the, just to make sure, not the element of Earth, but the planet that we live on, Earth, instead. Okay. So these are the traditional names for these Sephiroth on the Tree of Life. You see, you've got all the divine feminine receptive energy on one side. This is the perfect synergy being balanced in the middle. And the divine masculine, the active energy, is on the right-hand side. So this chart shows their traditional name. So like number 8 is Hod, and it's known as Splendor as well in English. So it's got the Hebrew name and the English name. So I'm just giving you a chart there. You can have a look at that in your own time. You can consider it. So these dots are called Sephiroth, and they are related to the minors, the aces, or the court cards. These lines that run in between them, they're called pathways, and all of these, I'll show you in a moment, are related to the major arcana cards. So just so that you've got an idea of what we're talking about, the aces are all separate down the left-hand side, and then these are all of the 2 to 10 of each suit for the minor arcana cards. So all of these illustrate daily experiences that we all have. They're not bigger spiritual lessons in life. They are just our normal day-to-day things. So the aces are the pure energy of the suit that are uncolored by anything else. So, and they're always this very positive energy, and they're like the new start or the new beginning of something. They're the inspiration. So all of the fire, these are all ruled by fire, the ones, the element of fire. So when we work with tarot from an astrological perspective, we work with the elements. So fire is one, so it's all passion, inspiration, courageous, active, go-getter type of energy, exactly like you would do in astrology. All the cups are water, so they are all emotional and intuitive, things like this, relationship based. The swords are all ruled by air, so they're all a little bit cooler and a little bit more mental, logical. They're also quite a difficult suit. You can see even in some of the cards, like the 5 of swords here, the 9 of swords, the 8 of swords, the 10 of swords. They're known as the most difficult suit in tarot. And then we've got the pentacles, and the pentacles are all very pragmatic, and they're earth energy, and they're stable, and they're about manifesting things. Okay. So this is one way in which you consider the cards with tarot, is that in Kabbalah they have 4 worlds of existence, and we talk about this in tarot. So fire, so when we can think about it exactly like we do astrology. So when you're thinking about the element of fire, then this is related to the spiritual world. It's the archetypal world. So every tarot card that is fire will be connected with this energy, which in Kabbalah is known as Absoluth. And it's divine, it's psychic energy, it's inspiration. All the cups are related to the world of Briar, which is the heavenly, the archangel sphere. They're intuitive, they're feeling, it's creative imagination. All of air are related to the world of Yetzirah, which is the world of paradise and angels, the soul. So whereas the spirit is Briar, which is cups, the soul is in air, is logical, it's our thoughts, it's analyzing, it's strategic. So these 3 are completely separate from Earth. So it's kind of almost like there's 3 and then there's 1. So even though they're seen as equals in many ways. So because Earth is the amalgamation of these 3 together. So Earth is when everything comes together, and it's the physical universe, it's the natural body. It's the only real, tangible, like we can touch it, suit in tarot. It's instinctual, it's our sensations, it is taking action, it is creating. So it's about physical things and manifestation in the physical world. These are the aces in tarot. So as I was saying, so these aces are the pure energy of the suit. So fire, water, air, earth. And then these are the minor arcana cards. So the minor arcana cards are related to either a quality or a personality type that either you are stepping into, like how should you portray yourself? How should you act in a situation? They can often suggest other people if we're doing a tarot reading. But often I see them more as archetypal energy of how we should be being or what we need to be aware of in our own actions. You can see here, I've given them these little FE, FA, FW, FF titles. And that's because every page is ruled by Earth. So because this is the fire set, it's F of E, fire of Earth. The page of air is air of Earth. The page of Pentacles is earth of Earth. So it's the strongest one. The page of Wands is water of Earth. So likewise, you know, the Queen of Wands is going to be, she's fire because she's Wands, but then she's water. So all the Queens of water. So the Wands, fire of water. The Queen of Swords is air of water. So whatever suit she is, the suit is going to be more powerful than what comes after it. So for the Queen of Wands, the fact that she's a fire suit, the fire will still be more powerful than the water, but the water modifies it. So the fire is her excited, passionate element that all fire signs have. But the water element here is what gives her emotional intelligence. So I'll just leave that with you to have a little contemplation with in your own time. So, but this is the keys that we use basically for exploring astrology aspects in tarot. So this one, I created this one on a different paper by accident. So it's a bit watercolor paper. So, but hopefully you can see it okay still. So this is, we have the astrological wheel. And this is then when we put all the decans on it with the cards in tarot. So say, for example, the Five of Pentacles is related to Taurus here, and it's Mercury in Taurus, that card. And it's got the time frame of April the 21st to April the 30th. Now, many tarot readers do, if their client is asking for a reading that has timing, this is how tarot readers will use timing. Personally, I don't use tarot timing because I'm an astrologer and I think astrology, you know, that's what it's made for. So I always use that personally for timing, but I do love to consider the decans when I'm thinking about tarot cards in relation to their astrological significance. And I do also really like when I'm having a look at birth charts and I'm like, oh, hey, you know, for example, you've got your sun. You know, you've got your son, maybe you were born on the 29th of December. Ah, that means that you've got a Two of Pentacles energy around your sun then. That's Jupiter in Capricorn. Ah, you know, so these are ways in which I will use this. You'll see that the also, as well as the minors, you can see I've numbered them here. And so it's like Two of Wands, Three of Wands, Four of Wands, and they go around in the four quarters, the four segments. So from the ascendant to the IC is 1 to 10, from the IC to the descendant is 2 to 10, I should say, and then around again. So and they go in. I've color blocked them here, so all the reds are fire. You know, Aries, Leo, Sagittarius, you know, green for the earth signs, yellow for the air signs, and blue for the water signs. So, and you can easily read this because W is for wands, P is for pentacles, S is for swords, and C is for cups. So you can refer to this whenever you want to, basically. So if you wanted to have a think, oh, when is the Ten of Swords? When is, what is this type of an energy? Oh, you can have a look at this chart and go, the Ten of Swords is the Sun in Gemini, for example. So you'll notice that the the court cards are around the outside, and they go over more than one of the elements. And this is really to reflect in particular that people are more of a complex nature and that we evolve a lot as we mature and we change into a different individual. The Page of Pentacles and the Ace of Pentacles these are more reflective of the larger kind of elemental aspects of things, and they can be read in much of the same way if you like. So I will leave that with you. So this is a slide from one of my tarot courses that I teach, just to give you an idea how this works. So we'll have a look at the Eight of Cups here as an example. So the Eight of Cups, you can see on this card, there's an eclipse, it's nighttime, and literally somebody is walking off into the distance. So we can see on this card that the imagery is... First of all, is that this person is by themselves, and it looks as though they're going off on a journey or they're leaving something, and they're doing it under the guise of an eclipse. And whenever there's an eclipse, eclipses are always these very significant kind of watershed moments. So this is in blue. This is Hod, this area that's ruled by Mercury here on the Tree of Life, this Sephiroth. So it has an overarching energy of Mercury, this card, which means that there is an actual slightly more pragmatic quality to all of the eights. All of these have Mercury that are ruling them. So because it's cups, though, it's still very emotional, and you can see they're literally leaving. So this card is about letting go of separation. Sometimes we can feel lonely, but we know that we need to be moving on. There's a bigger picture of things. If this card is in a difficult position in a reading, then often people are staying out of fear. It's a point of resignation. But in other times, depending on what other cards are there, it can be a point of forgiveness. And likewise, if you were having a look at an astrology chart, if you were having a look at the decan of what this is, depending on what aspects it's creating, that could also suggest whether somebody is leaving of their own volition, or if they're lonely, or if they feel as though they need to forgive somebody or something, or they're resigned to something. So this here is showing you that this card is Saturn in Pisces. But remember, it has that overarching Mercury energy. So it's still very mental. Saturn is the importance of restricting emotions in Pisces that can be all over the place at times, because Pisces doesn't have boundaries. It's incredibly emotional, and also very spiritual. So, but Saturn is being a bit more structured here. So this card is symbolic of spiritual quests, making a change, but also it could be a bit inhibited, or it could be having an epiphany. There are many different meanings to the card, depending on how it shows up in a spread. I've just put a few of them here to consider. As I said, we've got a time frame there. And also in tarot, we do sometimes tend to consider the color that it might be associated to. So all of the major arcana cards in tarot, and also the minor ones, have different color sequences that were also given by the Golden Dawn as well. This card is orange. For meditational purposes, and they're also given botanical references as well. A bit like how in Indian Vedic astrology, rather than just being rather than just being diagnostic like a lot of Western astrology is, Vedic astrology tends to be quite remedial, and tarot can also be that way too. So these are the major arcana cards here. And so these are all the major arcana cards. So, and they go in sequence. So you'll notice that I've got the Fool completely separate, because it is very separate from all of them. And you could say almost that the Fool is this journeyer, this pure energy, this pure essence. And the Fool, like an actor, journeys through lots of different characters that he plays in movies. And likewise, we go through this journey through life, from the magician up until the world. So it is a journey of self-development and spiritual growth. Okay, so here, this is the tree of life. And again, I have just put down here the different astrological associations for these points. But on this map, I've also put the symbols of the original points before Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were discovered. So originally, path 1, even though many people think of it as being ruled by Pluto, originally, this one, Kether, as it's called in Hebrew, was known as the first swirlings, and it's symbolized normally, traditionally, by just a little dot. So I've just added that there in blue. Number 2 here, whilst these days people think about it as being related to Neptune, originally it was related to a wheel that had 12 sections, just like a zodiac sign, to represent all the zodiac signs, to show that this is the potential for everybody. It's the idea of the totality of humanity, and all of our choices, all of our potential choices in Chokmah here. And then the rest of them are as they always have been, which is why I've left them in black. Diath has no number, and it's this very unusual mystical point in Kabbalah. I've put it in green as Uranus because in traditional Kabbalah, they didn't actually even have Diath. There's very little that's been written about it historically, and it didn't really sort of start getting used until a lot later. So I've just put this in here, just if you want to explore it at your own leisure at a separate point. These are the major arcana cards, and the major arcana cards listed down here are along all of these lines that are called paths in tarot. So much like in astrology, you have 0 to 29 degrees, even though there's 30 degrees. In tarot, you have 22 major arcana cards, but it's 0 to 21. So kind of similar. So here I've put down the astrological planets in black. And I have put the zodiac signs in red. These are all the ones that are associated to these cards. The blue I've put because these are what it was originally. So before Uranus was invented, this card was connected to air. Before Uranus was before Neptune was discovered, this was water, the hangman, and Pluto was not originally for judgment, it was fire. You'll notice there's no element of earth. We've only got the other 3. That's because earth is seen as a synthesis of all the major arcana cards together. So there's no earth. So that's how we look at the major arcana cards and connect their astrological aspects. If you want to, I won't go through this now, but I did pop a tarot reading in here that you can have a look at in your own leisure to do if you have got a tarot deck. This one is based on the 12 houses in astrology. You can either do this deck with, you can either do this tarot spread with one deck, or if you fancy being fancy and you've got more than one tarot deck, you can actually, I wrote this so that you can do this tarot deck with 2 spreads as well, but you will need to separate your cards out into different piles. But all the instructions are given there for you. So that's something you can have fun with. And it's also a way of, if you would like to learn more about tarot and how it connects to astrology, it's also a great way for you to start exploring that and understanding the connections. So for example, if I say to my astrology students who have also studied tarot with me, if I say to them, and say, for example, my astrology students who have never seen a tarot card before, and it's their first tarot lesson, and I say to them, I show them the 8 of Wands, which I'll show you in a second, and I say, tell me what this card means. The only thing I'll say to you is that it's Mercury in Sagittarius. Obviously, my astrology students are going to be able to tell me exactly what that card is straight away. And the other way is opposite as well. So if I have tarot students and they've never studied astrology before and they know nothing about it, but they've been studying tarot, as soon as I show them the 8 of Wands and I say, tell me, this is the 8 of Wands, and tell me this is the same as Mercury in Sagittarius, they'll be able to tell me what that Mercury in Sagittarius means just because they've learned this 8 of Wands. So they have it's great to have an understanding of both and to be able to synthesize them. These are just some ideas for you to explore tarot further in your own time. So one thing is that you can pull a card every day for reflection, do some journaling, and consider the astrological correspondences. On the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, they do not have them illustrated, but the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck actually has the astrological symbols on the tarot cards, so you might find that easier. There are also a number of other more modern tarot decks that have the astrology symbols on them too, if that's going to make it easier for you, just saying. So you can also explore your natal connection by pairing your planetary placements in your birth chart with the major arcana cards. So say, for example, if you were born, your birthday is Aries, you were born with the sun in Aries, then the sun for all of us is going to be card 19. The sun is ruled by the sun. But you would be pairing, if you've got Aries, your sun in Aries, you're going to be pairing the sun with the Emperor card, which is number 4. If you've got Venus in Virgo, then for all of us, Venus is the Empress. But if you've got Venus in Virgo, you're going to be pairing it with the Hermit. So you can reflect on the aspects as well that these make, and also the different dignities and the decan rulerships and all these sorts of things. It's just a different way to expand your sort of understanding and looking at astrology, I guess. You can use this same approach for transits and progressions, overlaying the symbolism of tarot onto the current cosmic weather patterns. You can also track the minor arcana cards during the period of time. So say, for example, at the moment, we're in the time frame of June the 4th. So it means June the 1st to June the 10th is Gemini. Is Gemini decan, and this is the 9 of Swords. So this is something that you can have a look at, and you can journal and reflect these things. You can obviously practice the tarot spread that I just gave you, and also there are some books here too, which I'll show you because I pulled them out for you to have a look at. I think I did all of them. Yep, I did. I've got a couple of extra ones as well. And if you want to, obviously, thank you very much, by the way, for everybody for coming. And I hope you've enjoyed the talk. We will have a quick questions and answers. I know I've gone over time, sorry everyone, but we've got about 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes for questions. Obviously, thank you for everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed that. We covered a lot. Also, just because I work for Esoteric Technologies Astro Gold, if anybody enjoyed the software this evening and you don't have it, you can get 10% off Astro Gold by using the discount code Natta Jain. The Astro Gold IO website is the detail is there for you at the bottom of that page. You're welcome to do that if you like. You get a 10% discount. And also, if you would like to hear more from me, then this is also TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook that we have for Astro Gold and Esoteric Technology. And that's where all of where you'll find me, basically, and where I put my posts up. So let me come back here. I will stop sharing the screen and let's make that big. Hello, everybody. Hi. There you go. Nice to see you all. This is me now. So I hope you enjoyed that. I have some books to show you, and then you can ask me some questions. So this one, I didn't add it to the list because I don't know if you can still get this one because it was actually based around the astrology transits in 2024 and tarot, but it's called Tarot for Magical Times. And I don't know if you can still get it though, but it's a really cool book because in the back of it, it actually really goes into detail of the tarot cards being decans in astrology. So I don't know if it's still available, but yes. So this one was by Rachel Pollack and Johannes Feibig. So there's that one. That's really cool. This one isn't in the list, but I decided to just pop it up to show you anyway. This one is a super cool book. It's quite dense. It's one of those books that you read and you read a tiny bit and then you go, oof, I need a cup of tea. I'm going to sit down and digest that for a while and then you go back to it. But it's a brilliant book. And this is a history of occult tarot. It's got a lot of astrology in there. So yeah, it's great. This one is by Decker and Dummett, this book. This is a brilliant book. It's got a lot of Kabbalah in there as well. This one is Tarot Wisdom, also has astrology in it, but nothing like that one I just showed you. Oh, I think it's a bit blurry, but this is Tarot Wisdom, and this is by Rachel Pollock. It is a fantastic book. This is the one that I get all my tarot students to read. Great book. And then this one is more of a book on correspondences. And this will have a lot of astrological stuff and the decans in as well. It's not that clear, is it? And this is Tarot Correspondences, Ancient Secret for Everyday Readers. And it's by T. Susan Chang. I have listed that one in the resources. And then this one is a last one. And I love this book. And this is called Meditations on the Tarot, A Journey into Christian Hermeticism. And it's by author unknown. You know, like sometimes spiritual groups and stuff, rather than giving their author's name, they say author unknown. Well, this person did the same. And this is also a very dense book where you need a cup of tea after a paragraph or so. But it's the tarot that it has on it is nothing to do with divination at all. It's all about philosophy, spiritual philosophy, hermetic philosophy. It's one of the most profoundest books I've ever read in relation to tarot. So it's an absolute golden treasure trove, this one. So this is the talk. It was a bit of a whirlwind. I hope you enjoyed that.
Natta, thank you so much. That was so informative. It was very interesting. I don't know whether you had any questions to be answered there. Is there anything, Ben? Can you see?
There's not in the chat. So people, if you've got any questions,
did anybody? I hope you all enjoyed that. And I hope my voice was okay. Sorry, I've been a bit unwell recently, so my voice is a bit husky. So hopefully,
that was great. Thank you so much. It was great.
My pleasure.
I'm quite sure we'll be getting back our tarot books and having a look at it.
Yeah.
I think it made it very interesting.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Did anybody? Sorry, I just have to get my puppy. Hold on, my puppy is just at the door. 2 seconds. Oh, look at this little guy. This is Beaumont, everybody. Oh,
buddy.
Little baby.
Natta, I had a question for you.
Yes.
I remember reading that Aleister Crowley changed the order of the tarot, like switched 2 of the cards. I think it was Strength and maybe Justice, or he switched the order because he was of the opinion that it made better sense with, I think, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. Do you know much about that, and do you agree with that substitution?
An excellent question. So in actual fact, so Strength and come on, down you go. Oh, hold on. So Strength, a great question. So Strength, and let me get my tarot cards here. So Strength and Justice was swapped over, and he did also swap over the Star and the Emperor due to philosophical aspects, but mainly it's to do with these guys here, which is in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. It's number 8, which is Strength, and number 11, which is Justice. So Leo and Libra. And so this is in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck. This is number 8, and this is number 11. In the Crowley deck, he actually uses the, well, I say original format, but it's important to remember that tarot has changed lots and lots over time, and the order of the cards have changed significantly, quite a number of times. So Crowley didn't technically change the order. It was more so that he was using the order that was used prior. It was actually Arthur who changed the order, because he felt it fitted in better with his more Christian philosophy of things. Over time, so I've got a tarot deck called the Natta deck, and it's got over 90 tarot cards in it. So some tarot decks in the past have had more than 78 cards. Some have had less than 78 cards. They've changed over time. At one point, like the Christian virtues, you know, chastity and stuff like this, prudence used to be part of the deck as well. So it's changed quite a lot. But the Crowley one is sticking more so in a traditional sense, in actual fact. And it is the Rider-Waite one that diverts a bit more so. But most people don't realize that, because the Rider-Waite Smith deck, whilst it's not the original, obviously, it was published in 1909, as we know, but the Rider-Waite Smith deck is the most iconic and well-known tarot deck today. And because of that, most contemporary tarot decks, and so what I'm referring to as a contemporary tarot deck in this context is anything after 1909. The vast majority of contemporary tarot decks are based on the Rider-Waite model, which is using the swapped round version that went with Arthur's more Christian mystical perspective. Whereas Aleister Crowley stuck with the older version. So the Marseille deck that I was showing you a picture of, the Marseille deck, that deck, it's the other way round. You know, justice is 8 and strength is 11. And so the other most popular tarot deck today is the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck that wasn't published until a number of decades after the Rider-Waite Smith. But that's the second most popular tarot deck mainly today. And so if a tarot deck these days has 11 as strength and 8 as justice, it's normally because it's been inspired by Thoth. But the thing about the Aleister Crowley Thoth deck is that it is he as much as his deck is a little bit more complex for people to get their head around. It's a great deck. I love that deck, but it's a bit more complex for people to get their head around when they're starting off tarot, because not only does Aleister incorporate those, it's very heavily based on the astrology and Kabbalah and stuff like that, but then Aleister also incorporates his own philosophy with the cards as well. And on top of that, he also merges more significantly Eastern and Western philosophy than the other decks. So it's a little bit different. I hope that was an answer to your question.
Oh,
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
Hello. Hi. Yes, please do.
Oh, I saw an art gallery presentation over several weeks on the Art Deco movement, and that timing is exactly the same as for these all these tarot sets you're talking about. And I found the illustrations and the theory. It's very Art Deco. I mean, buildings were built like it and everything, so that you could live in a magical world and stand under a roof at a certain point and know you were under that particular card, so that trying to infuse magic into everything we did, I think that was very Art Deco, with humans as sort of spiritual beings portrayed everywhere. Do you get that enjoyment? Yeah.
It's beautiful, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she was very heavy. I mean, you can see her artwork is very heavily influenced of the time, and it was a very magical era. Also, the theatre was a big thing for her as well. And it's interesting in the deck. I'll see if I can find it, because she actually added. You see a lot of the tarot cards, like if you can see this now. So that's like the 9 of Wands, and you see how there's this very particular background. She's like really drawn a sharp line here. So a lot of the cards are based on this format, because it's the same format as a theatre set. So most of the artwork is based on the idea of a theatre set. And then if you had the different I guess, props that you bring down in front of it. So it's very much like that. But she also put her own spin on things as well. So yeah, absolutely. All of that kind of Edwardian, and also a little bit of like a medieval vibe as well. There was a bit of a renaissance in fashion styles around Edwardian times that you know, like the Golden Dawn, they loved in particular all of the Arthurian legends and stuff like this, you know, medieval stuff started coming in around that time artistically as well. So in this one, the Nine of Wands, this is an example of her Pamela putting her own stamp on things. So this little black cat here, this is believed to be her friend, her theatre friend's cat called Snuffles.
Is there biography of her?
Yeah, there is, yes. So they didn't there wasn't for a long time, but there is, you can actually buy, there's a book about her now, and about her and her life and creating the tarot deck. The tarot deck that I have for her, this was my version. Well, I've got a lot of different versions of this tarot deck, but the one I used tonight is it's called the Smith Waite. It's a centennial edition, and this deck particularly honors Pamela because she never really got a mention, or she never really got recognized. She that tarot deck became popular after she died, so she never saw any of its popularity at all. So and in this deck, the Smith Waite, they really honor her in this one, but there is a book about her now as well. So yes, it's fascinating.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much for everything.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Did anybody else have any questions? I know
I just had a comment. It's Yvette speaking. I had a comment. Just looking up Wikipedia just now in Aleister Crowley's deck. It was between 1938 and 43, which is interesting. I didn't realize it was the war years that the deck was designed in. So yeah, interesting timing.
Yes. It was interesting timing, wasn't it? So he didn't get it published again. That didn't come to light until after he passed as well. So and he had the lady who did that was called Lady Frida Harris, who was the artwork is very different on that deck. The artwork's quite beautiful actually. It is it's like cubism almost. It's a very different style of artwork. It's quite cool though. But yes, interesting times that these decks were published, and obviously now these days people are publishing all sorts of different tarot decks all the time. So
I actually thought it was originally the justice in the I thought Aleister Crowley had actually changed it to put Leo and strength in the position 8, and so apparently it was the other way around.
Yeah, so if you have a look at I'll see if I've got one here. Let me see. I'm not
so
sure.
Waite changed it.
Yeah, I don't think I've got. My tarot decks are all like the way down in a big box over there. It will take me a while to shuffle through them, but yeah, basically, if you have a look at a Marseille deck, if you have a look at the Tarot Marseille, which was published in the 1700s, and if you just Google, if you Google strength Marseille deck and justice Marseille deck, you'll see they're the other way around. Yeah.
Right.
And so after the Marseille deck got published, the Marseille deck basically, I mean, there's been hundreds of different variations of tarot cards. You know, they were so popular as a card game over time. You know, they got banned and then they were allowed again in Europe, and then banned and allowed again because they got banned because, you know, people were gambling and getting drunk and using them and stuff like this. And but they were so popular at one point that people used to buy them, didn't even use them, and would just throw them on the fire for like an offering when they were sort of doing rituals and stuff like this. So so they were used in all sorts of different ways.
Natta, have you seen the Liz Green pack? The Liz Green.
Liz Green? No, I don't know. I didn't know she did a tarot. Did she do a tarot?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, I'll have to check it out.
I've got hers as well.
Yeah. As in the astrologer, but she did a tarot. Yeah, right. Did she? Oh no, I didn't know she did. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So Natta, we drew a card and it was the Page of Swords.
Well, that's a great card. Well, I think that's very much about what I'll find my Page of Swords to show you. So, and I think that's very much about what we're doing here this evening, really, isn't it? we're all chatting, we're all learning new things, we're opening up our mind to like new ideas and concepts and
Yeah, it's interesting. There's about 1,000 or more decks on the market, today, in today's world. You've got anything from 1,000 decks. But the Waite deck is, people tend to go back to the Waite deck.
They do. Well, most tarot books these days are based on that. So, but like how in astrology, like there's a bit of a people now, are starting to get more interested in traditional astrology again after a long time. It's kind of had it's a bit more in vogue than it used to be. In the same way in tarot, people are starting to, it's a bit more sort of, people are starting to explore older tarot decks now. And so now, where there wasn't before, now there are more books that are being written that are just based on the Marseille, like this one. So this one is based on Marseille. So if you were going to read this one, you'd really want to have a Marseille deck at hand when you're reading it, rather than a Rider-Waite Smith, because otherwise it won't really make so much. I mean, it still will make sense, but just the visuals are very different. Whereas, yeah, the other ones, this Rachel Pollock. So this book is pretty good because I like what she does in here, is that she actually. So this is the devil. I don't know if you can really see this, but this is the page of, this is all talking about the devil in here. And she actually gives you lots of different decks throughout history that have, and what they look like for the same card, and, how the symbology has changed and the interpretations and stuff like that. So if I go to, you were asking about card 8 and 11. So if I go to card 11, if I can find it, that's card 12, nearly there. That's Hangman. Card 11. So you can, here you go. There you
Sorry,
go. I didn't need to find my tarot deck. It's here. So you can see here, this is a picture of the Rider-Waite one where Justice is 11. And then you can see up here, this one's a bit clearer, but you can see up here, this is Justice, and this is from the Marseille deck. And I don't know if you can see that, but it says number 8. So it wasn't Crowley, it was before. So, but I understand where that comes in. Also, I guess the other thing I'd say is that in like the Golden Dawn and different kind of occult groups, they have something called an occult binding, which is when sometimes, which sounds wild, but sometimes they purposely give you red herrings that are not true.
Red herring.
Yeah, they give you red herrings that are not true. And you're only going to really find out that is a red herring if you go deeper in your studies.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how much they do it now, but they used to anyway. So that was not a red herring. That wasn't the purpose of that, but that can also sometimes has occurred over time as well.
Law does that. Legal cases, like there's a Dude Award, famous English case for who owns a dead body. And as it turns out, in Dutch, that means dead body. Dude Award. So Queensland only recently did a case called Dude Award on dead bodies, just so they could do it all again.
Ah.
But it's completely, considering what they do to dead bodies these days, it doesn't matter, but it's a mark of history, not necessarily, yeah.
Fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's the same thing and sometimes the same people.
Yes,
I found lots of barristers where, but they say, oh, you're a joiner, you're an Aquarian, they all know. I've done cast charts on the beginning of royal commissions and things, and I recall several people who were in them were saying to me, oh, it's all about this and that, and all they've done is restated the chart. So it's, no, same thing.
Yeah, same thing, isn't it? Oh, well, thank you for sharing. That was
That's right. I thought you ought to know how
Yeah.
distinguished you all are.
Thank you,
Um,
Natta. That was a really wonderful talk, very informative. I think for people that, you know, have studied tarot and people that are less, you know, new to it, I think less familiar with it, I think that was really insightful for everyone. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Well, thank you everybody for coming. I hope you enjoyed that. And also thank you very much for inviting me.